Guys, this is another series of my OLT game analysis, and today we are going to look at a battle between PDC and Specterito. This is still round 1. So starting with PDC's team, you can clearly see that he brought a balanced team. The Ferrothorn, Hippowdon, Latios core is very common. It's Hippowdon and Latios plus Steel type. I played it with Scizor before, with defensive Scizor, and it works very well because Hippowdon takes any hits, any physical hits that are not super effective, and is also great bulk. It doesn't get 2-hit KO'd, it doesn't get 1-hit KO'd by Charizard Wise, Fire Blast in the sun and such. And Hippowdon is just a great bulky Pokemon in OU. If you run balance, you should run Hippowdon because it checks so many things like Charizard X, Mega Pinsir. It checks so many Pokemon, it's just so good. Then we have a Ferrothorn because Hippowdon cannot take water hits, and it also cannot take grass hits, so that's where Ferrothorn comes in. Also, these two form a very good hazard stacking core. Hippowdon gets up the Stealth Rock, Ferrothorn gets up the spikes. And then if you look at these two struggle with strong special attackers, and that's where Latios comes in. Latios has very good special defense, it's around 250, and also has a decent HP stat. But Life Orb Keldeo would just run through these two, through Hippowdon and Ferrothorn, just Secret Sword this, and Hydro Pump was called this. And then Latios, and that's where Latios comes in, it just switches in on Keldeo. The attacks still do a lot. Spec Secret Sword, for example, does around, or I think it's over 50, but then you can roost. So these three are pretty much really standard. And now let's move on to the offensive core. It is Gardevoir, Latios, Keldeo, and Excadrill. Yes, Latios belongs to the offensive core too. Latios is a really good Pokemon because it is bulky one, and it can also hit very hard with Life Orb Draco. So Latios is just a very good Pokemon in OU. Okay, we have the Gardevoir here, which is just a very strong special attacker. It has Hyper Voice, Psyshock, Focus Blast, and you can play around with the last move. If your team is weak to a specific threat, for example Mega Scizor, you can run HP Fire. If you need some support, then you can run Healing Wish. Or if you need to weaken a certain attacker, for example, if you need to weaken Metagross on the switch in because your team is weak to it, then you can just go for Will-O-Wisp, surprise him, and then you burn the Metagross, and then it's just half the threat it was. So last thing, we have Keldeo here, not the last but almost. We have Keldeo here, which is probably Specs. I'm pretty sure, because he needs another strong wall breaker. Specs Keldeo is just very good in this meta, very hard to switch in. Even Venusaur takes around 25 to 30 from Scald, and then you have a burn chance, and it does a lot to the Lati twins, to the point where they have to roost after Keldeo's attacks. And also Ferrothorn cannot take the attacks well because you can go for Scald, and if they get burned, their Power Whip doesn't do much. So now the last thing is Excadrill. And now you see, okay, this is a sand balance team because Excadrill gets Sand Rush. There's no way this is a Scarf Excadrill with the Hippowdon. And looking at his team, I'm pretty sure it doesn't have Defog Latios because you try to set up your own hazards with Hippowdon and Ferrothorn, Spike plus Stealth Rock, and there's no way that you're going to defog them away. That just wouldn't make sense. Late game, for example, if the opponent runs a Slowbro or many grounded Pokemon like Ferrothorn and Heatran, for example, then you wouldn't want to defog your own hazards away. If you have a spinner, Excadrill is a great spinner, it is very fast, also very threatening. They cannot stay in with many Pokemon because of its coverage, so you oftentimes get a free rapid spin off with it, which is great for late game for your sweepers to hit the last ditch attacks. So I think that's it to PDC's team. Pretty standard OU Pokemon, pretty standard threats. Let's move on to Specterito's team. It is Also known, this is a TDK team. I used it once in a tutoring video with Oki. And as you see, we have Charizard Y here as the Pokemon the team is built around. And PDC really has to fear that Tita is going to trap his Latios, because PDC has a problem with Charizard. He cannot switch in very good in it. He just has a Latios and everything else gets one-hit KO'd almost. So if he lets his Latios get trapped, it's almost over. Then he has to play around a lot, but he cannot because the attacks are just too strong. Then looking at the offensive core, it's just Charizard Y with 3 attacks roost. It is Tita with Pursuit, as I said, to pursue the Latis, because they take Charizard's hits so well. Then he has a Lati on his own, because if you look at the defensive core, the defensive core is Gliscor, Slowbro. Slowbro takes on many attackers, for example Medicham, which PDC's team doesn't. But Slowbro does, and then you include a Gliscor because Slowbro is weak to Gengar, for example, or to other special attackers, and Gliscor can take them on. Gliscor cannot take on Keldeo, for example, and Slowbro takes it on. So these two are very good synergy. You can read it all up in the strategy decks too. And also then you have a Ferrothorn, because Dragon plus Steel is just very good coverage, very good typing. And as you see, PDC has Fairy, Steel, Dragon. That's also a very common type combination. Okay, I think that's it to this team. This is Calm Mind, Slowbro. I know that this is SD, Gliscor. And also to notice, the team looks pretty slow and not really fast. You give up momentum if you go into Ferrothorn and Slowbro, because these are very slow. But if you go into Gliscor, you can SD up. It's always a threat, because Earthquake does a lot after +2, and also knock off. The coverage is good and also cannot be toxic, and thus it's good against Storm. Okay, that's it for the teams. Let's look at the battle. Alright, let's just watch the battle. So PDC leads off with Hippowdon, the opponent leads off with Charizard. He goes for Solar Beam, not KOing the Hippowdon, but the Charizard is such a huge threat that he has to go for Stone Edge and kill it, because every time Charizard gets to attack, it is 50-50 between going for Latios or not. So he goes into Tita, pursues the Hippowdon, but it is pretty much useless, because everything sets up on it. He doesn't need it at all. He has no strong physical attacker. So he goes into Gardevoir, gets up the Hyper Voice. Specterito goes for Protect on the HP Fire, knowing that he might have played it. Now Specterito makes a kind of risky play, goes for Rocks, knowing that PDC is going to switch out because HP Fire doesn't kill. He switches into Slowbro, which is okay. Goes for the Leech Seed, which is good because Slowbro has to be worn down a little. Now he goes into Latios because Slowbro cannot touch Latios at all. He won't go for Draco because Ferrothorn and Tita are switching, so that's why he's switching into something else, and that is Excadrill. The opponent switches into Ferrothorn. Earthquake does around 40%, that's why he's switching. Oh, he goes for Swords Dance here, and goes for Iron Head, and almost kills and gets the flinch there. If Specterito went for Earthquake, I'm pretty sure it would have killed, and he would have lost his Excadrill. Which, let's see, would it have been crucial if he lost his Excadrill? Yeah, a bit, because in the sand you knock out Tita, you knock out Latis pretty much, you knock out Slowbro if you get up enough hazards, and Ferrothorn gets up to KO too. So that was a pretty risky play, and maybe it might have been a roll, but it paid out because now he lost, because Specterito lost 2 Pokemon, and the rest, and he just has to play with 4 Pokemon against 5 Pokemon. That is a bad thing. Not always the winning scenario, but his offensive presence is almost gone. The only thing that has offensive presence now is Latios, but all his offensive Pokemon get walled. The only thing he can do now is try to Calm Mind up with Slowbro and try to win. So let's resume this game. Excadrill gets the choice specs, goes for the Iron Head Excadrill, why not? He lives the Draco, I think, does 75%. Maybe it would have been a roll, but PDC playing a bit risky here. Gets the burn on the Slowbro. it is an also, yeah, just scolding here, going for leech seed again. And let's see, Ironhead wouldn't have done anything to Slowbro, that's why he switched there. Sets up another spike on the switch out, because he probably wants to get up his own spikes to damage Keldeo and Gardevoir, but I think at this point it is already over. Let's see, he goes for Excadrill, goes for the EQ, probably does a lot more than 50 perhaps. Let's see, switches into Slowbro, goes for, yeah, he has to switch out again because it doesn't KO, but Slowbro cannot touch Gardevoir, and he has to spam Hyper Voice here. Oh, his Slowbro T-Waves him, which is annoying, but he can just spam Hyper Voice here all the time. That's close. He got the crit on the last one, as you see. I clicked too fast, but PDC got the crit on the Slowbro on the last turn. Then got killed by the T-Tar, and now Keldeo comes in. And this is over, because he just clicked Sacred Sword to win. So, good game. But PDC had this from turn 1, because he eliminated a huge threat to his team turn 1. Because every time the opponent clicks Fire Blast on Charizard, you have to predict if it's always a 50-50. He has Fire Blast. Okay, do you switch in your Lati to eat up the Fire Blast? Or does the opponent switch into Tita on your Latios double? That's always the question, because if you do, then they Pursuit Trap you, and you cannot knock out Tita from full with Draco. And after you hit one, you have to crit the second to knock it out, so that's not an option. And also he has no switch into to Charizard. That's why he pretty much had to lead with the Powder, eat the hit, and eliminate the threat, so that he puts himself in a very favorable position very early in the game. So that's it for this time. See you in the next video.